You've seen it, maybe you've been a part of it. A theological debate starts, probably about Calvinism. Why is it always Calvinism? And suddenly, it's not about theology, it's about winning. Voices rise, comments get heated, and before you know it, you start cursing like a Presbyterian. I don't even know what that means. And in the end of it all, no one's convinced of anything. Most people think defending theology means proving you're right. But what if I told you that's completely backwards? The internet is flooded with people who care more about proving a point than having an actual conversation. You can just check out the comment section in a lot of my videos. But here's the thing. You can hold strong theological convictions without being an. In fact, the way you handle truth says just as much about your theology as the truth itself. So let's look at 3 shifts on how to stand firm without steamrolling people. So why does this happen? Why do we turn into theological keyboard warriors? And there's 2 big reasons. The first is we confuse conviction with combat. See, somewhere along the way, we started thinking that defending the truth means going to war over it. And yeah, the Bible describes God's truth as a sword, but it never says you have to swing it like John Wick. The other reason we confuse conviction with combat is we think we're defending Jesus. Jesus doesn't need our defense. He is the King of Kings. Jesus scrapped with the devil, threw a haymaker, came out the victor. He defeated sin, he took out all its teeth, and now all death can do is buzz around and make noise. He doesn't need you to defend him from a keyboard warrior. He needs you to embody his truth through love. The second piece is when we prioritize winning over wisdom. Because if your goal in a theological debate is to prove you're right, they're wrong, then you're playing the wrong game. It's like playing Risk with the rules of Monopoly. You can't buy Australia. See, Jesus didn't debate to win. He debated to reveal truth and change hearts. And there's a huge difference. Think about Jesus' interactions with the Pharisees. Most of the time, he answered with questions, not arguments, because he was leading people into truth to set them free. So what's the fix? How do we stand firm in our beliefs while still reflecting the character of Jesus? And there are 3 key shifts that can make all the difference. Shift 1, lead with curiosity, not combat. Imagine you're in a discussion about predestination and free will. And maybe you strongly lean towards one side, but the other person has a different view. Instead of immediately arguing your point, raising your own blood pressure, take a curious posture. And here's what this looks like. Step 1, ask clarifying questions. And so you start by genuinely wanting to understand their perspective. It's saying something like, that's interesting when you say God's sovereignty means he determines everything. What do you mean by that? And then listen with curiosity. And don't think about your argument or defense, just be present and listen. And then maybe go a little deeper. How did you land there? Or was there a specific passage or experience that shaped your view? And here's what this does. It shifts the conversation from debate mode to discovery mode. And the odds are the other person probably feels more invited to share rather than simply defend their view. Step 2, repeat back what they said. So if I understand you right, you're saying because of verses like Romans 9, you believe God's control means human choices are ultimately secondary. Am I getting that right? And this does 2 things. It ensures you're not going to misrepresent them. And 2, it shows that you actually care about what they believe, which makes them more likely to listen to your perspective in return. And listen to this. You can respect and understand someone's beliefs without adopting them as your own. Caring about what they believe doesn't mean you have to agree. It just simply means you value them as a person and what they think. Step 3 is stay curious, not combative. Instead of rushing to a counter argument, stay in curiosity mode. Well, that's really helpful to hear. I kind of come at it from a different angle, but I'd love to learn from others who've wrestled with this. Would you be open to maybe hearing my thoughts on it? And instead of a tense debate, you have an actual conversation where both sides feel heard. Because what curiosity does is it lowers defenses. And instead of feeling like they need to win, the other person feels respected. And when people feel respected, they're far more open to listening. Shift 2, assume the best, even if you think they're wrong. Let's be honest, when someone disagrees with us, we tend to assume the worst. We think they must be ignorant, deceived, or unbiblical. But what if stay with me here, they're simply a human being trying to work out their faith just like you. And if you approach every theological disagreement as a battle, you're always going to see the other person as an enemy. Think about Jesus and the woman at the well. He's a Jew, she's a Samaritan, not normally friends. And Jesus was the perfect sinless one, while she, in the words of Borat, not so much. But what did he do? He met her where she was at. Even with people who were completely wrong, he led with love. So how do you do this practically? Well, instead of assuming in a theological discussion they're attacking you, assume they're searching for truth, even if they're doing it in a way that lacks maturity. And instead of labeling them a heretic, ask them why they believe what they do. And remember, there are probably things 5 or 10 years ago that you believe that today make you cringe. So rather than shutting down, stay engaged even if you don't agree. Shift 3, be okay with an unfinished conversation. Not every conversation, not every discussion has to end with resolution. Sometimes the best thing you can do is plant a seed and walk away. And that's Paul reminding us, it's not your job to change people. Your job is to be faithful. Let God handle the results. And so how do you do this practically? Well, first, you got to know when to stop. If the conversation is getting heated, pause and revisit it later, because at that point it's not going anywhere. And not every theological debate needs to happen in one sitting. Second, follow up later. So instead of arguing until someone caves, leave room for ongoing dialogue. This is a conversation. It's not a boxing match. Sometimes it's as simple as like, hey, I'd love to hear more about this some other time. And then 3, pray for them and you. Because if your first instinct is to argue instead of pray, something's probably off. And then ask God to work in both of your hearts. So here's my challenge. Next time you're in a theological discussion, before you hit reply and fire off that comment in all caps, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to win or am I trying to love? Because at the end of the day, the truth of Jesus isn't something we need to defend. He can take care of himself. He's the Lion of Judah. Rather, his truth is something we need to embody.